The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is Dr. Lani Leary. She is the author of No One Has to Die Alone. Now, Dr. Leary has over 25 years of experience as a psychotherapist working with chronically ill, dying, and bereaved clients. She served as the Director of Mental Health Services at Whitman Walker AIDS Clinic, as a professor of death studies at George Mason University, and as a researcher at the National Cancer Institute of NIH. Dr. Leary also garners wisdom from her personal experience, her mother's death when she was a child, her father's death from cancer, her own profound near-death experience, and has sat with over 500 people as they died. Joining me now is Dr. Leary. And Dr. Lani Leary, welcome to the X Zone.
Thanks so much for having me, Rob.
No One Has to Die Alone. Tell me about that title.
Well, I hope to change the myths and the frame of dying so that no one does have to die alone. Of course, there are people that do die alone, but there are so many people in our culture move away from the dying. And this is our last greatest opportunity for the level of intimacy and connection and service that we can provide during the time when we are all so vulnerable. And I want to teach people, coach people to move toward this opportunity and to not be afraid of it, because it changes the experience for the dying person, but it also significantly changes the grief of the family members and survivors after the death.
Why is it so important for people to talk about end-of-life issues, Doctor?
Because we are all going to die, and we have so much more power and choices than we are using. Do you know that 90% of us and 90% of our loved ones will die from an age-related or an illness, an age-related death or an illness, and that means that we have time to prepare. We have time to make choices. We have time to communicate our values and our wishes to our family, our physicians, our loved ones, those people who will care for us, so that we can live with our values and the ways that we choose right up to our last breath. But when we abdicate those choices and we ask our family members to choose or to guess for us what kind of care we want, what level of care, where we want to be as we're dying, we lose the voice in our own life. We no longer are the author of our life. And if we talk about dying before it happens, 90% of us will be able to die differently. Only 10% of the population dies suddenly and unexpectedly.
Wow.
That's really important. Yes, that's really important to know. So the truth is that, Rob, your mother or father is going to die. And I wrote this book because most people come to me and say, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to step outside of myself and get a hold of my fears and my guilt and all those overwhelming emotions. I want to help, but I don't know how. And so because I was, because I spent my life learning from the dying what they thought was important, I feel so strongly that it's time that I pass on their legacy.
Doctor, you and I have to take a commercial break. Please stand by. Exonation Dr. Lani Leary is our special guest, and that's www.drlanileary.com. And she is the author of No One Has to Die Alone. More with Dr. Lani Leary on the other side of this commercial break in 2 minutes as the X Zone returns from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone radio show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, or psychic phenomenon? Join me, Tim Bartley, co-host of Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, coming mid-January 2017 to the XZBN. We will channel spirits live and talk to them, revealing all kinds of amazing information. Spiritual attachments will be found and removed on the show, and so much more. To find out when you can listen to Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, visit www.xzbn.net for listeners on both sides of the veil.
And welcome back, everyone. Dr. Lani Leary is my special guest of this hour. She's the author of No One Has to Die Alone. Her website is www.drlanileary.com. Doctor, I'd like to throw a question to you. Maybe you can help answer this. Why are the United States and Canada such a death-avoidant culture?
Oh, well, we have been such a youth-oriented culture for so long that the opposite of that, old age and declining, is terrifying to us. And so it's our assumptions, our myths about old age, illness, and dying that really get in our way of compassionate care and connection. We make assumptions. And one of the myths of dying is that dying is a failure. Haven't we all heard someone say, well, he just didn't pray hard enough, or he didn't really do his chemotherapy the way he was supposed to. So now on top of dying, we're placing the burden of it's their fault. So one of the myths of dying and old age is that it's failure. Another myth is it is abandonment. And so if we don't work through our grief, especially children, come to a place of understanding that mommy left me rather than her body gave out and died, we need to clear up those myths and assumptions. Or death is a punishment. I didn't do life right, and so this is my punishment. Instead of the truth, which is death is going to happen to all of us. Death is universal. Death is often unpredictable. Another myth of death is that death is the end of a relationship. Not so.
What do you mean death is not the end of a relationship? If somebody dies today, they're not with us tomorrow. So how can this relationship live on past death?
Oh, the relationship can live on. My father died. I was with him when he died, and that was the greatest privilege of my life. I was his daughter when he was alive.
Right.
The truth is that I am still his daughter.
Gotcha.
Daughter is a verb to me rather than a noun. I daughter my father now by continuing to care for the relationships that he cared about, to support the organizations or charities that he valued, to bring his name back into the world, and to live as the daughter that he cherished. So I am in relationship with him, and I talk to him every day, because the truth is that I knew him so well for all those years that I can throw out a question to my father, and I know how he would answer. But the other thing, Rob, is that millions and millions of people, including myself, have had a near-death experience and returned with this very, very similar experience of being met by deceased loved ones on the other side,
Yes.
and of continuing that relationship, of knowing that their loved one never went anywhere, that they were always with them. And that is so hopeful and important to be able to share with people as they're dying and as they're grieving, because it means that we can reframe, that myth that we thought, that we believed, which caused us so much suffering, that we are no longer connected. That's not true.
What is it the dying need most, in your opinion, Doctor?
Yes, that's a great question, an important question, and it's actually very simple. The dying have told me consistently and repeatedly that I would say the top three things that they need that would make a difference, that we can all participate in, is the first one. The first thing is that they need to be listened to, and I mean deep listening. So often people go into a hospital room with an agenda that they're going to fix this person who is ill or dying. No, they need your quiet presence. They need you to listen to their stories, and even the same stories 100 times, instead of telling them, oh, you already told me that. But to listen to their stories that they are trying to organize and understand, to come to some sense of peace about what their life meant to them and what legacy they might pass on. So we need to listen deeply, quietly, without our agenda. It means we need to not analyze them or interpret or compare them to others or judge them for where they are. But just listen deeply.
I believe we can apply the listen deeply to people who may not yet be in a hospital or a hospice, but people who are getting on in years who want to be heard. And you said something very important.
Oh, it's so important, and they have so much to share, so much life experience and wisdom. And if we would just approach them with that openness of what can I learn from you? It validates that older person. It gives them, it reflects back to them this place that they have in life. So we need to listen deeply. And the second thing that we need to do, that they're asking for, is touch. Because so often those who are ill or declining feel as though they are ugly, ugly, dirty. These are words that they've used with me, decaying, and unacceptable. And our touch, again, silent touch, confirms for them, you are in the world to me. I see you, I value you, I love you as I always have. And the touch is so soothing. You know, I mean, studies, we know through studies that they release endorphins, those natural narcotics that help our body to relax. And people at the end of life, well, I'll tell you, I was working with one older man recently, and I walked in and he said, you know, would you sit with me? And I sat with him and I asked him, may I hold your hand? We need to give the dying back their sense of control, and we need to let them give us permission to enter the room, to touch them and things like that. But they so crave touch. So I asked, may I hold your hand? And he said, this is the first time in days that I have been touched without a gloved hand or by a stethoscope or a needle. This is the first human contact I've had. And you could see it in his eyes that he was so hungry for that, you know, to be reminded that he was human. So we need to touch. And there are so many ways that we can touch. We can teach our young children to participate in the dying process by having them come into the room and, here, you know, put lotion on Grandma's hands, would you brush his hair? Would you just stroke lightly? Yeah. So touch is very important. And the last, not the last thing, but the third most important thing that the dying have repeatedly told me is that they need to hear from their loved ones, from their caregivers, that they have permission to let go. And again, that is because so often we have the myth of, well, if I leave, they'll think, if I die, they'll think I've abandoned them. I don't want them to think I failed. I don't want them to think that I don't love them. So we as family and caregivers need to use those words. Dad, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to remember you. I love you. It's okay to go. Dad, Mom, it's okay to go on. Go in peace. But they need to hear that.
When was it, Doctor, that we took the dignity away from a person at their time, their final time with us? And why are so many people so spiteful that they don't want to let this person go because of their own needs? Yeah,
I'm not sure it's always spite, but it is
selfishness.
Their need. Yeah, their need to hold on because of their belief that they're not going to be okay. And I have a chapter in my book, No One Has to Die Alone, called I Can Cope, because I believe that I help a lot of people through the coaching process in therapy to learn to find the evidence in their life of all the ways and times that they have coped. Because, here's an example. Working with a family, and the parent has been diagnosed with end-stage cancer, and one adult child says, well, I'm going to get in there and do everything that Mom wants to make her experience as good as it can be. And the other adult child says, well, there's nothing I can do. I can't handle this, so you take over. Those two adult children have different experiences of their own ability to cope. One says to themselves, I can feel my pain, I can feel my grief, and together, Mom and I will work through this. But the other adult child is saying, I'm going to be overwhelmed by this feeling of helplessness. But you see, if we do participate, that's what that's the last thing we are, which is helpless. Yeah. So my message really for all of us who are aging, dying, or caregiving is we are not helpless, we are not hopeless, and we are not useless.
You know, I'm sitting here listening to you, Doctor, and I'm saying to myself, you know, not only does what the doctor is saying apply to a person who is at their end, but this also applies to people who are nearing their end, people in their later years. And and you know, I love the way that you look at death. It's I've been talking to so many people over 20 years doing this show who have had near-death experiences and experiences from the other side. The most profound example I was given was, Rob, just imagine a wall miles and miles and miles long, filled with books. Each one of those books has a chapter, and each one of those chapters is a lifetime. Doctor, stand by. We've got to take a commercial break. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Dr. Lonnie Leary is my guest. She's the author of No One Has to Die Alone. A great lady. We'll be back on the other side.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. X-Zone Nation, welcome back. This is very interesting, very heart-touching, a very important hour we're having here with Dr. Lonnie Leary. She's the author of No One Has to Die Alone. Her website is www.drlanileary.com. And Doctor, you and I were talking during the news break. I'd like to relate a story to you because I know you'll understand. As many listeners know, in fact, everyone who listens to the show knows, I used to be a police officer. And I remember one time I was doing radar in a school zone. And I stopped a car for speeding. I wrote the ticket and I went back to the vehicle. And the gentleman was so nice. They had just returned from their honeymoon. He said, "Officer, this is why we've moved into this community, because of the peace, the harmony." And, he said, I was wrong. So I accept the ticket and I thank you for being a gentleman. So I figured, wow. Oh, man, exactly. As the car left, what procedure was is you turned over the station copy of the ticket and you wrote down the notes just in case the person went to court and pleaded not guilty. You had your notes on the back of the ticket. I looked up and I saw this car coming, and this is a couple of minutes. I saw this car coming, flashing their lights on and off, honking their horn. And she pulled up beside the police car. She said, "Officer, you better get down there. There's been a bad accident. I'm sure somebody's been killed." Now, the only car that passed me going that direction was the car that I had stopped a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
I get up to the intersection. Their vehicle was hit broadside. The driver had expired. His wife in a bad shape. I called it in, got backup, got the ambulance. Fire had to extricate the bodies out of the vehicle. Get back to the station, and the chief says, "Well, what are you doing here? You should be out on the road."
Oh my gosh.
He says, "Get back on your horse."
Oh boy, yeah. Stiff up her lip.
Hey,
don't feel anything.
Well, don't feel anything. If I wouldn't have stopped that guy, he might still be alive. And the chief said, "Well, if you didn't stop him, he may have been dead." So not only are there healthcare workers who need help, not only are there the members of the family who need help, not only are those who are passing who need help, but the people, the first responders, police, rescue, fire, who deal with this on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And just because you are professionals doesn't mean that you don't feel it as deeply.
That's right.
and carry it around with you for the rest of your life. So, yes, absolutely, professionals, first responders, all of us need help. We need just the support and the companionship of someone with us, helping us to find meaning in it.
Can you just imagine the first responders who responded to the Twin Towers, 9/11, and the Pentagon?
Yes, I can.
God bless them.
Yes, I was there. Yeah.
Tell me, Doctor. We talked about patients, and thank you for hearing me out on this issue that I had. But how do we help a patient who is in denial or who does not believe they are dying?
That is such an important question, and I address that in the book too. You know, denial has taken on a bad word.
Yeah.
It's a bad connotation. Nobody should be in denial. I disagree. Denial is a coping strategy, and the truth is that most of us go in and out of denial all the time.
Yes.
But when we are, I'll give you an example. A young mother receives a diagnosis of terminal illness and has been told she probably has 4 weeks to live. She goes into what you call denial, or what most people would call denial. And her family members around her, her best friends, are saying, "You've got to get out of denial. You've got to get out of denial. This isn't healthy." Well, she is in denial. What she's done with the diagnosis is she's compartmentalized it because of her values. And her value says that her little 4-year-old needs to be taken care of first.
Exactly.
That she's not going to be able to attend to her own needs until she knows that 4-year-old has, that she set up child care for it, for the, all of that. So that's an example of denial that's very functional. But I don't ever take away denial from someone because we don't fully understand it, and it's their pacing, and all of us deserve the respect for our own unique ways that we cope and grieve, and the timing. And your example of being told to get right back on the horse and right back into your job, that was a disrespect for your pacing and timing of your reactions.
I felt totally in left field.
Yeah, right.
Don't you care about what just happened? But you do what you're told.
Right.
Now, so can we say, Doctor, that coping is or denial is a mechanism of coping?
It is. Yes, it is a mechanism of coping. And there are so many different levels of denial, so that there's a closed awareness is a technical term for one level of denial. And I'll give you a story recently that I just worked with, going into an elderly person's home, and her adult daughter said, "I don't know what to say to Mom because she keeps asking me if she's dying." She's 97 years old, and she has many, many different diagnoses, different illnesses. And so the daughter's saying, I don't know. I said, "What do you say to your mom when she says that?" She says, "Oh, I don't say anything. I don't think she really wants to talk about dying." Well, listen to what she's asking. And as I sat with this older woman and listened, what I found out was that she was wanting to know if the daughter knew that she was dying, because she knew she was dying. And so the daughter's trying to take care of the mother, and the mother's trying to take care of the daughter, and nobody's really talking about that elephant in the room, which is what's really going on. And so they lose the opportunity for that connection and that intimacy, and really talking about what's in their hearts, because they're trying to protect each other. What a shame.
It certainly is.
Yeah. So I coached them both about how to use different language to really talk about what was real for them, what was really going on, and how not to be afraid of it. And it worked.
Is there a story, Doctor, that best illustrates your work with a dying person?
Oh, my goodness. I've been so privileged to be with so many people at the end. I guess I would talk about the story with my father, because I wrote this book because when I was 13 years old, my mother died. and I did not know how to help. And because I did not know what else to do, I took my younger brothers away from home so that my mother could sleep. And it was all I knew how to do. And when I came home later on that day, my mother was gone. And what do you think it would be like if you never got to say goodbye to your mother?
I don't know how I could cope.
Yes. And so I lived for years and years believing that my mother had died alone, and that she believed that I had abandoned her. And so I carried years of guilt and grief and regret. And I wrote this book because I don't want anyone else to ever feel that way and to go through what I went through. So I spent the next, umpty-ump years going to school and working in hospices all across the country so that I could learn what I needed to, so that my other loved ones would not have the same experience and I would not feel the same way with them. So a couple of years ago, I held my father in my arms as he died. He had end-stage lung cancer, and I flew home. I canceled my university classes. I closed my psychotherapy practice, and I went home to take care of him. And we did everything together. Every day that we had, we talked about everything. I asked him if we could write his obituary together. We reviewed his life in scrapbooks. I asked him very direct questions. Who do you want to be with you when you're dying? Who do you not want in the room? Where do you want, cremation, or where do you want your ashes? There wasn't anything we didn't talk about. And on the last morning that I didn't know was going to be his last morning, he pulled the oxygen tube out of his nose and said, "No more." And he told me to turn off the oxygen machine, and I did. Because he had the right to have control over his death as he had control over his life. And I knew what he wanted and what he valued because we had talked about it. And so I was there to support his choices and protect his wishes. And I turned off the oxygen machine. He had already taken the tube out of his nose. I got up onto the bed. I held him. I cradled him in my arms. I told him that I loved him, that I was there with him, and I would be there right up to the end, and that I would be okay, and that it was okay for him to let go. He closed his eyes. His breathing became very shallow and slow, and for about 40 minutes, I just stroked him gently and sang a favorite song to him, and after about 30 minutes, he opened his eyes wide, just wide. He looked up into the corner of the room, and he said my mother's name. And I said, "Well, of course she's here, Dad. Where else would she be?" And he took his last breath, and he died in my arms. And that was the greatest gift that he gave me, and it was the gift that I gave him, that he did not die alone, and he gave me the gift of no regrets. So that's why I do this work.
God bless you for it.
Oh, it's my gift. Yeah.
At the time of passing, Doctor, do you know, based on your experience and the love you have for those who are fortunate enough to be in your life with you as a patient or as a member of the family, that at the time of passing, there are others who have already passed on there waiting to bring them across?
I do know that. And that was what my father was telling me in that last moment, that my mother, who had died, 45 years before, that my mother had come for him.
Wow.
And when I died, that was my experience also of entering a tunnel and being met by my mother, who was, this is another important thing to share, is that the dead are healed and whole and vibrant. So not only is death a transition and another beginning, but it is a healing. But I've heard that I've been with so many people who, as they were dying, had that same experience of looking at the foot of the bed and saying a loved one's name who had predeceased them. And, over and over and over again,
Right.
this has happened. So this is not uncommon. And as caregivers, we want to validate that, because can you imagine what a different experience it is, and I've seen this, for someone to be patting their shoulder and saying, "Oh, dear, no one's here. It's just the narcotic," Or as opposed to, my response, which
Yes.
was, "Well, of course," because you just hear this big sigh of, everything's okay. That's what I want to give people in this going through this experience is, it's okay.
So it seems, Doctor, that during life you're a caterpillar. As you're getting to make that transition to the other side, you're in the cocoon stage, and when you finally do pass, you're the butterfly.
Yes, and actually, this side of life is much more like that ugly caterpillar.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, much denser, heavier life, and it's just that we can't see beyond the horizon. But when a boat sails off into the horizon, it's not gone. You just can't see it.
Doctor, stand by. We've got to take our final break. Exonation, Dr. Lonnie Leary is my guest this hour. She's the author of No One Has to Die Alone. www.drlanileary.com. Once again, Dr. Lonnie Leary is the author of No One Has to Die Alone. I'll be back with a good doctor on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
18th Sergeant Central. 19th Sergeant, check. Officers on the scene.
Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, host of Paranormal Stakeout. With over 36 years in law enforcement, I have learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, UFOs, and extraterrestrials, how we gather the evidence, preserve that evidence, and present it to a jury of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Join me, Larry Lawson, every week on Paranormal Stakeout when, along with my guests, we'll take a journey to prove with indisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Go to xzbn.net for the broadcast schedule and check me out at paranormalstakeout.com.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A soul balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today. www.soulbalancing.world.
Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Lonnie Leary is our special guest to this hour. She's the author of No One Has to Die Alone. Her website is www.drlanileary.com. Doctor, first of all, thank you very much for joining us. And, as I said to you between the breaks, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. And I hope that everyone listening takes the opportunity of going to your website and buying your book, because I certainly believe that this is a tool for living.
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah, a hopeful tool.
Yes,
Yes.
but when it comes to death, dying, there's always the child factor.
Yeah, yes, there are children part of our community, and so often we leave them in the corner, and we think that we are protecting them by not giving them information, and that's one of the least helpful things that we can do for them. Children are little sponges, and they have radar, and they can sense when there's distress in the family. And depending on a child's age, but children are so egocentric, by nature, and they're supposed to be, that they interpret everything as revolving around them and as their fault. So if we don't explain illness or death to them, in the void, children go to the interpretation that, well, Mommy died because I didn't pick up my toys, or as in my case, and I thought a pretty bright 13-year-old, because I wasn't there, my mother believed that I didn't love her and felt abandoned, So we make it all about us and our fault. It's one of the ways we try to regain some sense of control, but it's very, very painful. So adults need to step in and check a child's understanding. Ask children, what are you thinking about this? What do you feel about this? And keep on top of it. We can teach children how to participate in ways so that they are less fearful, and they really raise their level of understanding of the process, and that when Grandma dies, they know, I helped Grandma. I made a difference. Grandma knew I was there. Grandma knew I loved her. And so even at a young stage, I did everything I could, you see. Makes a difference.
Sure does. You're making a difference.
Thank you.
Doctor, let our listeners know how they can find out more about you. Please give us your website and also tell our listeners where they can buy a copy of your book.
Okay. Yes, my website is www.drlanileary.com, Dr. Lonnie Leary. I also write a blog on Psychology Today as one of their experts, and that column is called No One Has to Be Alone, and I talk about bereavement and illness and dying in that. I also write a bereavement column for the site healingthespirit.org, which is an organ procurement agency. And you can buy my book, No One Has to Die Alone, at any major bookstore and on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and I hope independent local bookstores.
Doctor, thank you very much for joining us. I look forward to the next time when you visit us again here in the X Zone. Thank you very much for your time, ma'am.
Thank you.
X Zone Nation, once again, Dr. Lonnie Leary has been my guest. She is the author of No One Has to Die Alone. And one more time, www.drlanileary.com. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. We'll be back. Don't go away.